or it's less egregious than what happened in the Sharyl Attkisson case, but it's a version of it where they try to basically preclude you from getting the facts to prove your case. I mean, my favorite form of motion to dismiss is, they deny you discovery and then they say you didn't prove your case. Ha ha. So it's courts love to do this sort of gibberish.
Okay, well now you're gonna have to present the Sharyl Attkisson because I'm a little bit I can't present it. So Robert, take it away and I'll see what questions I think I can ask as you do this.
Well, if you watch Hush Hush episodes or Deep State episodes at vivabarneslaw.locals.com, then this feels just like it, and that's because it is one. So Sharyl Attkisson, a great reporter, sort of Allison Morrow, you can also follow as sort of in the spirit of Sharyl Attkisson, smart, independent journalist who just is old school investigative techniques, who's not as politically biased as most in that profession and occupation these days. As a PBS local investigative reporter, local CBS affiliate reporter, did various weekend broadcasts, did a bunch, worked herself up to being one of the top investigative reporters in the country, 5-time Emmy Award winner, awards across the country for all kinds of things of her investigative reporting. In 2010, 11, that time period in 2012, she started breaking major scandal stories about the Obama administration and was on the lead for it because so much of the mainstream media, it was during the Obama era and the second part of the W. Bush era, that the media just became overtly and openly partisan increasingly. And so they tried to pretend there were no scandals during the Obama administration. Yeah, if you're blind and you're deaf, mute, maybe. But so she started, she was the one to help break key parts of the Fast and Furious story. For those who don't know that story, I mean, I dealt with a crazy prosecutor who was attached to that case in another case. And, they are people associated with that case, did bogus audits on me, tried to accuse my client of conspiring to kill him, tried to accuse me of conspiring to kill him, got a rogue FBI investigation, rogue U.S. Marshal investigation. Every insane thing that could happen in that case happened in that case. So that gives you an idea for the kind of people handling Fast and Furious. But the Fast and Furious was basically where the ATF and the Obama administration got the genius idea of helping to arm Mexican drug cartels, purportedly in the name of tracking the guns to have a gun control agenda. And one of the guns ended up killing a border patrol officer. So they tried to suppress it as much as possible. Attkisson was one of the big people breaking all of those stories. Then she followed that up by breaking the Benghazi stories. I think 13 Hours is the great film that perfectly really nails what happened in that case in detail and the sort of moral horror of what the Obama administration, what Hillary did in that case. And again, Sharyl Attkisson's at the front of it. Well, around that time period, she starts seeing weird things in her house. First, the alarm system starts going on and off without any apparent provocation. Then all of a sudden, the TV, something's weird with the TV going in and out. Then all of a sudden, the phones are having problems. Then all of a sudden, the laptops and the computers appear to be going on and off by themselves during the night. And so she's like, what the heck? So she calls up and supposedly a Verizon person comes out. Fine. But well, she's connected. So she calls some smart security people and they find some unusual lines being into the home, into the Verizon system. Calls the Verizon system, they come out, someone came and appears to have fixed it, but it isn't fixed. And then that so-called Verizon employee disappears. She can never find him again. So and then about midway through, she does a bunch of FOIA requests. They Stonewall. A bunch of Trump administration people will Stonewall because of the idiots he appointed in a lot of positions. That's another rant for another day. So she ultimately pieces parts of it together, sues Eric Holder, sues other people, sues a bunch of John Does. And then for 4 years, the Department of Justice puts her in what a federal appeals court judge would later call the North Carolina Four Corners offense, which is a good ode given the Sweet 16 is happening today. That basically the four corners is where you run out the clock. And they put in the shot clock to stop teams from doing so. They basically file one motion after the next motion after the next motion, say it's over here and then it's over there, but it's not. So she's never able to identify who the other John Does are. And the Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals dismisses on multiple grounds, but one of them was a shocking grounds. First, they say if you violate the Fourth Amendment by spying on someone, that's not really, you can't do anything about it. No right to sue. Not under the Fourth Amendment. Now, Bivens doesn't extend that far. That's a new context. It's like new context. That's been in the Fourth Amendment since 1789. I mean, how is it a new context? But that was our Fourth Circuit, happy to run to protect the security state, which they do more than anybody in the country. That's why they take cases to the Eastern District of Virginia, like they want the Julian Assange case to go. And then they say, secondly, she also sued him because back in the late 1960s, we passed an electronic interception act. It has some other acronyms to it. But basically it said, nobody can spy on you illegally, and you can sue if it was called the Wiretap Act back at the time. And so she sued them under that. And they're like, well, no, there's qualified immunity there because what high-ranking official would know that it's illegal to ask someone else to break into your home and spy on you? The Fourth Circuit said that with a straight face, one of the most ludicrous interpretations of the law. Then they followed up with a third principle, which is, hey, you know all those John Does you didn't name? It's your fault. It's not the government's fault for hiding that information from you for 4 years. It's your fault. So 2 years later, flash forward, somebody comes forward and rats out who did it. It turns out it was an old buddy and pal, somebody I humiliated multiple times, defeating his cases in court for multiple years, who then was put into a key position, unfortunately, under Trump, and that would be Mr. Rod Rosenstein. It turns out Rod Rosenstein, while he was the U.S. attorney in Baltimore, according to the information she was given, signed a special crew to do the illicit spying on her. And they did it outside the traditional chain of command. That's why they were using physical surveillance. Because these days you could just go through the NSA and the rest, they can spy on you without doing any of that. When you see physical signs of surveillance, it means it's an off-the-books operation. And I've had clients be a victim to it. In fact, including in that case I was talking about earlier. We found and tracked this was happening to him. So and not only that, they identify 4 other people as part of this team. And what's interesting is who those people were. 2 of them were part of the Silk Road operation. One of them's in prison right now for stealing Bitcoin during that Silk Road operation. There's a lot of reasons why Ross Ulbricht, I think I'm pronouncing his name right, he was defended by a buddy of mine, Joshua Draytell, the supposed Dread Pirate Roberts of Silk Road. There's a lot of evidence that they framed evidence in that case, entrapped him in that case, created false charges and false narratives in that case. And he may not be Dread Pirate Roberts, but that's for a future Hush Hush episode. As to who might be. But so those illicit actors were part of this that Rosenstein hired. I mean, it's right out of a James Elroy book, except these people just not as skilled as the people that James Elroy talks about. And 2 others, including one who is a top Mueller guy, who's now at CrowdStrike. And people can look up the connection to CrowdStrike and a lot of issues related to Hillary Clinton emails, to Russiagate, to a whole bunch of things. So a whole bunch of these actors that, the Frank Sturgises of the past that magically show up at, the assassination of this person, the assassination of this person, which you all can see at the Hush Hush episodes in part, magically show up against Sharyl Attkisson. She brings suit against them, and the district court says the same thing the Fourth Circuit said, nah, you can't sue most of these people. You can't sue Rod Rosenstein. He had no idea that it was illegal to procure an illicit spying on your house.
I didn't read the judgment, but he can't sue them because time barred, or can't sue them because of qualified immunity, or another reason.
Said, one, you can't sue them under the Fourth Amendment because nobody can be sued under the Fourth Amendment for this, which is nuts. The second issue is whether about the actual law that specifically makes it a crime to do this. And it says, no, it makes it illegal for a person to actually do it. But if you procure it, if you ask somebody in the chain of command to do it, you're magically immune, under qualified immunity, because you could have no idea that could possibly be illegal. I mean, and the higher the rank you have, the more immunity you have, which is absurd. It's a very dangerous decision. She's going to fight it all the way up. Hopefully the Supreme Court maybe takes it one of these days. All this sovereign immunity stuff is gibberish. They invented qualified immunity. They invented mostly in the 1960s. Go back and look at the history. You used to be able to sue federal officers at the beginning of the time of the Constitution under common law theories like trespass, assault, whatever it is. And then they could raise a defense that, hey, what we did was lawfully ordered. And you could counter by saying no, because it wasn't constitutional. And then we dealt with that for hundreds of years. And then we decided to suddenly change all that, part in the 40s and part in the 60s. But when the national security state started to rise up is when the court suddenly said, we need to have some immunity. And that's where all this nonsense started. So it's a dangerous doctrine that keeps getting worse and worse and worse.
So, and the bottom line now is that was it a split decision? What is 3-0 of the Court of Appeal? They basically said you cannot sue because of qualified immunity for a Fourth Amendment alleged violation,
or for illegal intercepts, which is a specific statute. Can't sue for either one.
Was it a?
And the higher ranking you are, the more immune you are. And as long as you make sure you procure it, that you ask somebody else to do it, you're in the clear.
Was it a unanimous decision from the Court of Appeal?
The Court of Appeal's earlier decision was 2-1. But the dissenting judge only dissented on the John Doe part. He didn't dissent on the rest. I mean, it's a disturbing area of law that most people don't know about, that she's highlighting by willingness to expend substantial resources, fighting it, contesting it, and exposing it. And again, one of the best she does, I think it's Full Measure News, I think it's called, a Sunday broadcast on the Sinclair Cable Network. Does a lot of other work for other places, has a good presentation on what happened in the news coverage of the election that people can find on the Hillsdale College YouTube channel. Great reporter, great investigative reporter. And what happened to her is just shocking. I mean, just shocking. And the idea that you can't do you can't even get into discovery. You can't prove your case. You can't find out the full scale of what happened because they hide and lie about FOIA. They hide and lie during discovery. They hide and lie through their judicial procedures. And then the courts affirm it. Courts say, good job.
I got to ask the obvious question. Political affiliation, appointments of those judges, do we know?
It doesn't matter in this space because the national security state is often the biggest advocates for various forms of sovereign immunity have been conservative judges. So they're Amy Coney Barrett types. So there's a lot of authoritarians on both sides of the aisle. And that's the problem. And Attkisson ended up having to leave CBS because they were becoming purely political. They'd always leaned political, but they were becoming overtly political. I think it was CBS that hired Ben Rhodes' brother. I mean, so it was just a crock. But she was sort of the canary in the coal mine, not only about how bad bias was becoming in news. People like her and Alison Morrow should be in investigative news. They shouldn't have to leave to try to do investigative news. And she was a canary in the coal mine about how bad the surveillance state was getting.
What did they ultimately do with any of the information that they were spying on her for? Did they?
She doesn't know. She just knows that they spied on her en masse. Doesn't know what they did with it or how it translated to other things. What you can see is that 2 years later, she's out of CBS. So, did some of that information filter back? Did some of it become some sort of rumor campaign against her? Never know.
Yeah, I'm just reading this. We are witnessing a historic moment. The downfall of Western civilization, the rotten corruption has degraded all the pillars of our society. It is, look, the other thing is the bigger the government gets, the more prevalent this type of abuse gets. And it's a self-serving abuse because
it's favoring the state over the individual. And as the state concentrates and arrogates power to itself, the judges are the ones facilitating it and enabling it. And so there are still good judges who push back, like the Scottish judge who pushed back against the lockdown to protect the church, like a Canadian judge. Well, there was one bad ruling, one good ruling, but a Canadian judge who ruled in favor of free speech, like a U.S. judge, 2 U.S. decisions that came down that said that you have to protect the free speech rights in one case of academics, in the other case of lawyers, that you can't force people to say he, him, her, gender, whatever it is, the Jordan Peterson discussion. And another one that was trying to limit lawyers from talking about things, court also struck. So there's still some good, honorable jurists. There's some still based Judge Stickmans out there, but there's some other corrupt ones too, unfortunately.